Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. So today I want to talk about a subject that's, I don't want to say contentious, but something I feel like gets lost when a lot of us are talking about this game. So it's not just the idea of balance versus fun or anything like that, because as much as I hate to admit it, fun is very difficult to balance because how do you balance for something so subjective? Some people like myself find generators fun, so it's very difficult to balance completely around that, but a lot of people find it boring, so it's like, okay, well, you want to appeal to both of those, and there's stealth players, people who prefer to play altruistically, people who prefer to take chase, people who think chase is the only fun thing about this game, etc., etc., etc. But the big thing I do want to talk about is the idea that this game is a 4v1 game. Now, what do I mean by that? Because most people are probably saying to themselves, well, of course it's a 4v1 game, it's why it's asymmetrical. While this is true, I feel like whenever a lot of us, including myself at times, talk about balance with this game, we tend to forget that it is a 4v1 game. And I'm talking about this from both sides. I know a lot of Survivor players who often talk about this game as if it is still a 1v1 situation. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, killers like Nemesis, killers like Pyramid Head, Deathslinger, Killer and Trickster, killers who are immensely good at anti-loop and getting those downs on an individual survivor super quickly, but still don't win very many matches. And the reason for this is because all three of them don't have very much map mobility, which means they don't have much map pressure. Nemesis excluded because of the zombies, but that's a whole AI situation. We'll probably get into that with the Nemesis interview, I'm sure. But whenever we're balancing these killers, we hear a lot of suggestions on how to buff them or nerf them or whatever. And it's like, well, Deathslinger can just aim his gun and just instantly zone me, and there's nothing I can do about it, blah, blah, blah. And then I think people tend to forget that, yeah, that's you at that moment, but he still has to take the shot, and if he misses, he's punished. And if he takes too long to get that down, well, then your other three teammates are doing generators. If he tunnels you out and your other three teammates are doing their job properly, they will be doing generators. If the killer goes to camp you and your first thought is, okay, I don't want to play this match, fair enough, completely understand that. However, if your objective is to win the game, you wasting as much time as possible by hitting those skill checks and just staying on the hook can be the major difference between that killer winning the match or not. The moment you give up is the moment your teammates have to now deal with the repercussions of that action. Now, from the killer perspective, I hear this as well too, because there's a lot of people who want to give so many killers so many things that make them better in the 4v1. And it's like, well, some killers just aren't designed around that. Like I said, Trickster is a very good example. He's extremely powerful in open areas, a lot of loops, and it's extremely map dependent how well his power is able to be used. But because he lacks the mobility, even though he is a 115 now, he doesn't have that much map pressure or control. Plus, he does waste a lot of time reloading. Now, there are ways to mitigate that, but the point is, it's still there inherently in the kit. So the question is, how would you buff a killer's inherent design to be better in the 4v1 macro gameplay sense without completely changing the killer and making them completely different? And I think that's where a lot of us get lost in the sauce on some of these aspects of thinking of balance. Once again, myself included, I'm not guilty or innocent of doing this at all. I'm not going to sit here and say, no, never do it. But I think whenever we're thinking of balance, we often forget that aspect of it. Same thing with like general gameplay. It's like we'll get mad at survivors for pre-dropping pallets, right? It's like, well, of course they're going to pre-drop pallets. If they go down, then there's pressure on at least two people in the match now. The person who got hooked and the person going for the unhook. Technically, three, the killer's doing the job right. The person on hook, person getting unhooked, and the person he's about to go chase. Ideally, that's how the match should be going, is in that kind of a loop. At least I feel like that's the intention. is to have one person on hook, one person unhooking, one person being chased, one person doing gens and other objectives. Ideally, that's the situation you want the entire match to be in. But then we get into the situation of, okay, well, how do you balance 4 players versus 1? Well, ideally, you would make it so the 4 are weaker than the 1 individually, which obviously they are for the most part in this game. There are other situations where they aren't, but for the most part, yeah. But we hear all these talks of how do we buff Survivor and make them better, and how do we nerf Killer and make them weaker, or vice versa. And a lot of them, like some of the Chucky changes I hear, it's like, well, now you're completely destroying his ability to go after other survivors. Or I've heard some insane changes people want to things like Trickster. I've heard someone talk about Trapper being able to teleport to a trapped survivor. I'm like, what? That's insane. No, Trapper doesn't need a teleport in his kit. Let me rephrase that. It doesn't work thematically or gameplay wise. If you just randomly give Trapper a teleport, it just seems out of nowhere. I don't know. Same on the Survivor side with certain perks. It's like, why were second chance perks such an issue? Because now you're equating the Killer to basically go into a 1v8 versus a 1v4. And you can even get more pedantic and say it was more than 8, but that was the problem with the second chance meta. The issue now, and I'm going to sympathize with survivors for a second, is that now we're in a meta where tunneling is very easy to do, and as a result, with there not being very many second chances, killers can leverage that. That means any mistake you make means more. And I think there needs to be more of a middle ground. I'm not going to sit here and say, just buff Survivor, or just buff Killer, or just nerf Survivor, or just nerf Killer. A lot of these balance decisions have to be much more nuanced than that. Every little thing you change affects so much more, and I don't just mean coding-wise. I mean overall. I mean, DS is a great example. The moment Decisive Strike got nerfed, tunneling became a massive issue, even with off the record and base kit borrowed time. It just did, because now the Killer just has to hit you twice and you're downed anyways, and he can just put you on the hook. But I think our balance discussions need to start going more into talking about the 4v1 and not the 1v1. I think we focus way too much on the 1v1 experience. And I understand the reason for this is because that's where the highest impact and the most fun, quote unquote, comes from, is the 1v1. But at the end of the day, this game is 4v1. And we can't forget that. It's the same thing with generators, with certain perks, certain killer designs, certain perk combos, certain strategies. I think saboing is a very good example. Saboing is something I see many killers get frustrated about. And it's like, bro, it's a team game for them. Not for you, but it's a team game for them. Like, they're just trying to help a teammate. Why? I don't understand why you're mad. Oh, well, I don't get to play the game. You're playing the game. The game you're playing right now is the interaction between you and the other survivor going for the Sabo play. You pick what happens here. Either you try to brute force the hook, you take the body block, you stop the Sabo, or you drop the person you have and you go chase somebody else and apply that slugged survivor as pressure. There's interaction and options there, right? I think a lot of times we get into this sense of using buzzwords and talking about tactics that, aren't fun for either side, or all of this nonsense that doesn't at the end of the day mean anything really. Even me blabbering on for hours on end on this website, none of it really matters. I just do it because I think it's fun to talk about this game. And I know I'm kind of rambling in this entire video, and the main point kind of got lost, but all I'm saying, this game is a 4v1. Can we please start talking about it like it is, and stop pretending that it is only the killer versus the current survivor they're chasing? It is just so frustrating, and I think if we start thinking about it in the way it's supposed to be thought about, a lot of arguments would stop before they even start. Anyways, my links are down below. I should be streaming again soon. The next killer interview will be out Wednesday. I have a lot of more lined up, and I'm very excited for it. Not gonna lie to you, it's probably the most excited I get every week at this point. I know I sound very tired. It's been a rough time at work and whatever. And also, putting out these daily videos. I know some think they're lazy and they don't take any time. I'm not gonna sit here and say that they're like super intensive, but man, I still have to, kind of concentrate a bit. But I love you guys. Have a good one, and bye.